This is the Mop Up. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you for finding me. Are we going back to the moon on Wednesday? Is that possible? That's what I hear. Are you for it or against it? Leave a comment. I'm for it. I want to get the hell out of here. Maybe they'll take me because things are not good. Donald Trump, who prides himself as being the wrecking ball, has put the entire world on the brink of a breaking point. We are now into week 5, and Trump is railing against Europe for not bailing him out because they won't send in their own navies to free up the Strait of Hormuz. He's blaming Europe, which told him not to do this. Well, he goes back and forth between I don't need you to how dare you not help me. I've been in relationships with people like this. On Tuesday, he told Europe, I don't need you, and I don't need Hormuz because we make our own oil here in the United States. And then he said to Europe, specifically Great Britain, quote, build up some delayed courage. Go to the Strait and just take it. He told England it needed to learn to fight for itself. He said, America did the hard part. Now you guys go in. Well, this thing has spread around the world. I don't see how he is going to get the Strait of Hormuz open without Iran becoming not just a regional, but a global power player, stronger today than it was on February 28th when Trump first began bombing. Israel today is less safe than it was on February 28th. And the United States looks weak. Because with all our high-tech weaponry, the political will isn't there for American soldiers to spill blood all because Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth effed up. Well, here's the humanitarian toll in what is quickly becoming the biggest military blunder in American history. 1,574 Iranian civilians have been killed. 236 of them are children. No matter how many leaders are decapitated, Iran has more who are less moderate, more willing to become martyrs, the hardliners. Trump and Hegseth are stupid, arrogant, psychotic, and because they don't read, they project their limited understanding of the world on to their enemy. They thought because the Ayatollah was Iran's quote-unquote supreme leader, they figured if he's the supreme leader, if you kill him, the regime is toppled. But that's not the system Iran put into place back in 1979. Iran also has a president. It also has a parliament. It has judges. It has elections and mayors. And believe it or not, it tolerates a modicum of dissent, certainly more than Saudi Arabia does. Yes, it's an oppressive regime, but they do have protest movements there that don't end in everybody getting slaughtered. Sometimes they do, but they do allow some protesting. What Trump and Hegseth failed to understand is Iran wasn't ruled by a cult of personality. It's a bureaucracy, a government, and everybody can do each other's jobs. Nobody is irreplaceable. What Trump and Hegseth miscalculated was that Iran has been planning for this eventuality since 1979. Their missiles, their command and control centers are decentralized, buried in mountains. They are fighting essentially the one kind of war America cannot win. It's the same war America fought against Britain in 1776, a guerrilla war. We won it. George Washington was a guerrilla fighter. It's move quickly with weapons that don't have to be as powerful as the enemies. They just have to be strategic. And more importantly, it's a home game for Iran, which means they're willing to take more pain than we are. We're willing to inflict just as much pain as Iran, if not more. It's one of the reasons Hegseth and Trump did this. But Iran has studied the West, and it knows we have a breaking point. We had it in Vietnam, Afghanistan, and Iran. Iran knows wars are not won with bombs from above. Iran knows if Trump wants to win this thing, he has to do the unthinkable, commit ground troops who are willing to go door to door, just like our troops had to in Baghdad and Iraq. And we all know how that ended. Trump got into this because he thought, foolishly, Israel was winning. And if you weren't paying attention last year, you thought Netanyahu was winning. Why? Because Israel was decapitating the leaders of Hamas and Hezbollah. And Trump thought, I want in on this. I love this. And he thought, let's decimate the leadership of Iran. I want to be on the winning team. Well, he thought that way because he's stupid and because he's a fascist. He's a would-be dictator who assumes that Hezbollah, Hamas, and Iran are run by dictators, but they're not. He projected his limited knowledge onto them. All these organizations have regrouped. Trump and Hegseth liked Netanyahu's swagger. They loved how the pagers blew up, killing Hezbollah's top leaders. They loved the assassinations of all the Hamas leaders, and Trump wanted in on that. But time has now shown, despite Netanyahu's swagger, despite Israel's fearless strikes, killing innocent civilians in order to decapitate the leaders of Hamas, Iran, and Hezbollah, this war is not going well. Hamas has regrouped. Israel controls about 40% of Gaza, the other 60%. Hamas is in charge. Hezbollah, decapitated, regrouping. And Iran. Israel today is much weaker today than it was when Trump and Netanyahu launched this war on February 28th. Israel has to ration interceptors. It doesn't have enough of their $2 to $3 million interceptors that are chasing $20,000 drones. Israel right now has ground troops inside southern Lebanon looking to control, if not take, all the land south of the Litani River. 3 Indonesian peacekeepers from the UN were killed in 2 separate attacks in southern Lebanon on Monday. 1,260 civilians have been killed so far. That's since February 28th. 3,750 wounded, and more than 1 million civilians in Lebanon have been displaced. Defense Minister Israel Katz said the 600,000 Lebanese civilians living below the Litani River will not be allowed to return until the area has been secured. When is that? Nobody can say. Bezalel Smotrich is Israel's finance minister. He's a far-right extremist. He's part of Netanyahu's coalition government. He is now calling for a Greater Israel, where land south of the Litani River becomes the new Israeli border. This, as the Israeli Knesset passed on Monday a new law that would impose the death penalty on any Palestinian convicted of killing Israelis. But according to this new law, that death penalty would not apply to Israelis killing Palestinians. Israelis killing Palestinians like the settlers, unsupervised by a war-ravaged Israeli military. Israeli settlers have intensified their violence against Palestinians in the West Bank, averaging at least 10 attacks a day since this bombing campaign began on February 28th. 13 U.S. soldiers so far have been killed, more than 200 wounded. At least 15 U.S. soldiers were injured Friday when an Iranian missile and drone strike hit Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia. 2 of the soldiers were seriously wounded, 10 suffered concussions, and I can now confirm that Iran did, in fact, in that attack, succeed in destroying an AWACS surveillance airship, which cost about $700 million to replace. The AWACS, well, they're the first line of defense for not just our soldiers, but for the Persian Gulf's missile defense systems. It's the AWACS that spot missiles as those missiles are being launched from Iran, giving the United States, Israeli, and Persian Gulf military a heads up and time to calculate the coordinates before firing their interceptors. There are, for the time being, 3 theaters of operation. There's Iran, there's the Persian Gulf, and there's Lebanon. The United States is fighting in the Iranian theater, the Persian Gulf theater, but Lebanon is a separate theater of war for just Israel. It's kind of like off-Broadway. Mike Tyson famously said, everyone has plans until they get punched in the face. It's pretty funny. Everybody is, everybody has plans until they get punched in the face. So when the bombing campaign first began on February 28th, Donald Trump thought this was going to go like the one back in June. Remember when we permanently wiped out Iran's nuclear weapons capability? And now we had to go back again on February 28th to permanently wipe it out again. Trump thought this was going to be like the one back in June, or the attack on Venezuela, or the attack on the Houthis. He thought this was one and done, 1 week. That's all. He had no plans to send in ground troops. He prided himself on all those airstrikes in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific, taking out those alleged narco-terrorists. Those are war crimes, by the way. There's no proof that they're narco-terrorists. But he prides himself. Hegseth, so proud. We're winning and none of our soldiers are getting injured. He took pride in those airstrikes over Yemen, killing innocent civilians. They hit a refugee camp, killing about 60 Ethiopian refugees. But he took pride in the airstrikes over Yemen back in March of last year. And of course, as I said, the airstrikes in Iran in June of last year. He was so proud because he didn't have to send in any ground troops. Trump loves seeing things blow apart. His daily military briefing reportedly he has nothing to read. It consists entirely of Trump being shown video of stuff in Iran getting blown up. And he thinks, because he's stupid, because he's a worthless human being, he thinks that's how you win wars from above. If he had served in Vietnam, instead of getting 6 medical deferments for his phony bone spurs, he would have known you can't win wars from above. But he's stupid and worthless. So that's why his plan at the beginning, 4 weeks, tops, 4 weeks. Same plan George W. Bush, another draft dodger, had when he invaded Iraq, not knowing the difference between Sunni and Shia Muslims. He said this is going to be a cakewalk. How could it not be? They think. We're the strongest military in the history of civilization. So, America, here's what you need to understand. We are the strongest military in the world. But up until Trump and Hegseth, we called it the Defense Department. The idea being the Pentagon is there to defend us. It's safe to say that any country stupid enough to try to invade the United States will fail tragically. Now, bin Laden did succeed in flying jets into the World Trade Center and our Pentagon. But But no conventional army would succeed invading the United States. But Trump changed the name of the Defense Department to the War Department. Seriously. And he brought in a psychotic white Christian nationalist bigot who hates Muslims to run his new War Department. Hegseth promised to bring back the warrior culture, putting an end to woke by reminding soldiers every day that their job is to kill people and break things. It is not the job of a soldier to kill people and break things. It is the job of a soldier to avoid killing people and breaking things. He's talking about war crimes. So they changed the name of the Pentagon, the Defense Department, to the War Department, and then they went looking for some wars. And when you go looking for a war, it doesn't matter how much you spend each year on weapons. People don't like their countries getting invaded, and they will do anything it takes to kick you out. Since February 28th, the United States alone, not including Israel, the United States alone has dropped 11,000 bombs on Iran. Our chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane, brags, we control the skies over Iran. We can hover. Our jet fighters are now hovering from above, taking their sweet time looking for their targets and not having to worry about any Iranian surface-to-air missiles. Pete Hegseth loves that. He says, we're just hovering. We're taking all the time in the world because we control the skies. Now, is that supposed to be bragging? Because all that tells me, Pete Hegseth and Dan Kane, is you're stupid. You're bragging that you control the skies, that you've dropped 11,000 bombs on Iran. But you know regime change never comes from the skies. In fact, maybe Pete Hegseth didn't know that, but the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane, knew that. That's what he told Donald Trump a week before the war. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane, said, you shouldn't do this. You need allies. Even Bush went to the UN. He had allies. You can't do this alone. And we don't have enough munitions. Dan Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, according to the Washington Post, told Donald Trump, there's a lot of war going on, and our military-industrial complex makes a lot of money delivering weapons around the world. We're out of munitions. But Trump knew better. So while Trump and Hegseth insist we're winning, 11,000 U.S. bombs later, Iran is still launching more than 40 drone and missile strikes each day, killing Israelis and destroying infrastructure, especially the infrastructure needed to keep the oil flowing. Forget the Strait of Hormuz for a second, okay? That's, where 20 to 25% of all the oil must pass through. But it's not just the Strait of Hormuz. They're targeting refineries, oil wells, factories. 17% of Qatar's liquid natural gas infrastructure has already been destroyed. Happened like 3 weeks into the war. So Hormuz is closed, and there's really nothing Trump or anyone can do about it. This is what is called an asymmetric war. It's how we defeated the British back in 1776. There aren't enough bunker busters to pierce the mountainous region around Hormuz where Iran stores its short-range missiles. Now look at this. This is the Strait of Hormuz. On the top is Iran. Below is Oman. So look at this. Those short-range missiles are mobile, meaning they move very quickly, and they're buried in those mountains. So you can quickly take them out and fire down at any tanker or U.S. ship that's trying to pass through. And as I keep telling you, all it takes is one sunken tanker to clog it indefinitely. Those waters are shallow. They're just 2 lanes that can pass through. Look at the turn. It's like Dealey Plaza. It's like what Kennedy had to do. And above the mountainous regions, that's the book depository building. When something has to turn, it slows down and you become a sitting duck. 2,000 fully loaded tankers right now are sitting in the Gulf, unable to get through. Iran's parliament is reportedly about to pass a bill authorizing Iran's Navy to charge $2 million per tanker to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. It's estimated that alone would bring in an additional $100 billion a year in revenue. I keep telling you this, and it's important to remember. We spend $1 trillion a year on defense, on weapons. Iran spends less than $30 billion a year. And they're funding Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, and they're giving some money, not a lot, but they're giving some money to Hamas. And now they're going to charge $2 million per tanker to get through the Strait of Hormuz. That's an additional $100 billion a year in revenue. Secretary of State Marco Rubio called Iran's plan to charge $2 million per tanker, quote, illegal and immoral, as opposed to all the legal and moral decisions this administration keeps racking up. Yeah. Marco Rubio calling something illegal and immoral. On Monday, Iranian drones struck a fully loaded Kuwaiti oil tanker that might have been carrying as many as 2 billion barrels of oil. It's the oil tankers. Pipelines cannot move oil the way tankers can. The attack was on a ship called the Al Sami. It took place off the coast of Dubai, and luckily the hole in the hull was patched, averting a major ecological disaster on top of the one that's already taking place. Again, it's not just Hormuz, which controls about 20 to 25% of the world's oil supply. Iran is attacking refineries. On Monday, dozens of Iranian drones attacked eastern Saudi Arabia, where most of that country's oil is buried and refined. So they're going after Saudi Arabia's oil. Now, Saudi Arabia said it successfully knocked 8 ballistic missiles and 12 drones out of the sky during the past 24 hours. Bahrain says they've intercepted 182 missiles and 400 drones since the war began. Again, those interceptors cost at least $2 million each. They're looking to stop buying them from the United States. They just signed a 10-year deal with Ukraine, which can produce interceptors on the cheap. Launching its, launching its 87th wave of attacks on Tuesday, Iran hit 2 oil refineries in Israel, and another barrage over Israeli cities like Tel Aviv ended up injuring 11 civilians. Israel is worse off today than it was on February 28th. Iran claims it sent drones to attack the United States Fifth Fleet stationed in Bahrain, claims to have knocked out radar installations on the base. They are taunting Trump. They are taunting Hegseth. the leadership of Iran says we welcome a ground invasion. After dropping 11,000 bombs in Iran in a little under 5 weeks, how is it possible Iran has the upper hand? How is it possible that Iran is stronger today than it was on February 28th? Because Iran is their country, not ours. Nobody in America wants to die in Iran, but Iranians will fight to their death. So will the Israelis. So would Americans, but not over Iran, not over Hormuz, not because Trump is incapable of admitting he is responsible for the greatest military blunder in American history. Trump, by all estimates, and this is not Democrats, this is the world, this is Republicans, by all estimates, he's cornered. He's desperate. It's almost as though Iran tricked Trump into launching this war. Zbigniew Brzezinski was Jimmy Carter's national security advisor, and he claims he tricked the Soviet Union into invading Afghanistan, the graveyard of empires. Zbigniew Brzezinski wanted to take credit for the fall of the Soviet Union. He said, I did it. I tricked them into invading Afghanistan. Trump is trapped and cornered. He can't get the Strait of Hormuz opened. This is serious. This is a big problem. Not being able to get the Strait of Hormuz open. It's not just a humiliation. He has turned Iran into a regional and global power player now, and there's nothing to stop Iran, which didn't have a nuclear weapons program. Our own intelligence told Trump they abandoned their nuclear weapons program in 2003. There's nothing now to stop Iran from enriching uranium past 60% to weapons grade. Who's going to stop them? They've got something more powerful than a nuclear weapon, the Strait of Hormuz. Now, Trump today and yesterday was threatening to leave with Hormuz still closed. Okay, he's saying to the British and to Europe, you need the oil, you open it, you send your navies. He literally said, grow some courage, learn how to fight, the draft dodger. So if he does that, and I have a feeling that's his only reasonable option, is to leave with his tail between his legs and let Europe work out some kind of deal with Iran. I mean, Europe is not on board. Even Italy is saying, we're not allowing Americans' jets to fly, use Italy as a base. They can't use Sicily as a base. Spain won't let America use their islands as bases. France said, this is not our war. So Europe is positioning itself as a possible peacemaker with Iran. They could possibly negotiate Hormuz opening, but Trump has to go. America has to go. So if he does that, and that is probably the best case scenario, that he just declares victory, says, I don't need Hormuz, we got plenty of oil here in the United States, and he leaves, that will be the single biggest military defeat in American history. And it will mean that America is no longer what it once was. Europe and Iran, as Trump likes to say, would end up holding all the cards. And as I said, Iran would emerge as a global powerhouse, as would the EU, as would Great Britain. Now, the problem is he's not going to want to leave. If he stays, he's going to look even more pitiful than he already is. And eventually, he's going to be talked into sending in ground troops. Somebody's going to have to pay for that. There's a $200 billion war supplemental. I'm assuming Congress won't pass it, but there are people in the military, like Pete Hegseth, who are telling Donald Trump, these are the same people who said, one and done, 1 week, we're out of there. These are the same people telling Donald Trump right now, we got to go in. We got to send in ground troops. Just a few. And I can assure you, if he sends in ground troops, we are looking at a bloodbath that Americans at home don't have the stomach for. And he's cratering in the polls. He's looking at a complete washout for the midterms. The Senate may even be in play. I mean, who knows? His base has turned on him because he ran for president in 2024 promising to put an end to these forever wars. And more importantly, he promised to make inflation go away. He said, I'm very smart. I know how to solve inflation. 40% of Trump supporters said they voted for him in 2024 specifically because they thought he could fix inflation. Well, a gallon of gas on average is up $1.06 since Trump began bombing Iran. That's a 36% increase. Some parts of this country, it's even more. They're talking close to $5 a gallon. We're saying, some of my listeners are telling me they're paying $6 a gallon. Brent crude in the past week has closed at times as much as $116 a barrel. Before the war, it was $72 a barrel. So there's a ripple effect. In fewer than 5 weeks, we're seeing a ripple effect. The NASDAQ dropped 12% off its October highs. That's way into what they call correction territory. The International Monetary Fund out with a report saying all roads lead not just to higher prices, but a global recession. That's the evil International Monetary Fund predicting something we haven't seen since the 70s, stagflation. That means a recession and inflation. Now, Economics 101, which is garbage, but it's the entire Federal Reserve is built on the belief that you can control an economy by raising and lowering interest rates to balance inflation and unemployment. That's how these things work. So stagflation leaves the Federal Reserve powerless. Because if we're in a recession with inflation, lowering interest rates to juice the economy, cheap money, that's what Trump is demanding from Jerome Powell. He wants cheap money, low interest rates. Well, conventional wisdom is cheap money creates inflation. But stagflation means inflation, unemployment, inflation, recession. So the Federal Reserve doesn't know what to do. Either way, it loses, we think. Nobody really knows what causes inflation. They don't. It isn't government spending, I can assure you that. I can assure you that a social safety net doesn't cause inflation. Republicans want you to believe that because they don't want a social safety net. They want the labor force desperate and willing to accept starvation wages. JetBlue saying it has no choice now but to raise baggage fees as the cost of jet fuel has doubled in the past month. Airlines cutting back on flights while raising the price of a ticket. It's spring, and this is where it gets really serious. Farmers here in the United States and around the world are planting crops with the cost of fertilizer up 30%. Can't make certain fertilizers without petroleum products. 30% of the world's fertilizer, or some of the chemicals that go into fertilizer, 30% flow through the Strait of Hormuz. It is now estimated that $194 billion was erased from the Middle East's economy since the war started. In 1 month, 4 million people in the Middle East have plunged into poverty, and they can't afford food. The Persian Gulf also produces 8% of the world's aluminum, and Iran knows this. After they hit an aluminum plant in Bahrain, one of the largest, and then another one in the UAE, another one of the largest aluminum plants in the world, the price of aluminum jumped 4%. Smelters throughout the region are curtailing production, which affects people who enjoy soft drinks and beer. And you also need aluminum for medical imaging to see what kind of damage the soft drinks and beer have done to your body. Medical helium is also used for medical imaging. Hang on. Can I do it? Okay.
Medical helium is also used for medical imaging, and cancer diagnosis around the world rely on medical
helium. 30% of all medical helium comes from the Persian Gulf. Silicon Valley also needs helium. The price of helium is rising, not just because it's helium. It's going up. There's a shortage of helium. This is now being called the worst interruption of the global energy chain in world history. Worse than the 1973 oil embargo. Why? Because OPEC shut off the spigot in 1973. They chose to create the shortage. This is war. And Iran has partly chosen to create the shortage, but they're doing permanent damage to the infrastructure that goes into making petroleum products. And it has been estimated it's going to take anywhere between 5 and 10 years to rebuild the infrastructure that's getting destroyed. And then again, it's going to cost money to rebuild. More importantly, humanitarian aid agencies worldwide say the rising cost of fertilizer and fuel is exacerbating what is already going on, and that is worldwide famine. It's estimated that if this war continues into June, 45 million additional people will be starving, especially in the sub-Saharan and Asia. We're already at close to 1 billion people on the planet starving. And it's getting worse because of Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and Marco Rubio, who got rid of U.S. aid. Yes, Marco Rubio is in charge of foreign aid. Our Secretary of State, who just called Iran's decision to charge a $2 million toll to pass through the Strait of Hormuz illegal and immoral. He called it illegal and immoral for Iran to charge $2 million. That's Marco Rubio, who oversaw the largest cut to foreign aid in American history. In real dollars, Trump and Rubio and Musk cut foreign aid by 50%. It's estimated in the past year 1 million people around the world relying on the United States for food and medicine have died. U.S. aid was one of the only reasons people around the world liked us. Lancet estimates that if American spending on foreign aid continues at this reduced rate, over the next 4 years, 14 million people, nearly half children, will die. And Marco Rubio, who helped launch this war, who cuts foreign aid in half, calls Iran immoral. This is what is happening to the world because Iran has shut off the Strait of Hormuz. Now, on the last show, I told you about the second arrow in Iran's quiver. It's called the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Nobody wants to talk about it because nobody thinks Iran would close that too, the same way nobody thought they would close the Strait of Hormuz. Trump said, "We were shocked that Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz." I'm going back to this map because in the next month you're going to be hearing about the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. I have a better map than I used on the last show, I think. Yes, this is better. So, this is really important, and I know most of you hate geography, but if you don't know where you are and you don't understand your place in the world, you become delusional like Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth. So on the upper top right, you see Iran. Below that, you see the Persian Gulf. And right there is the Strait of Hormuz. And above Hormuz is the Persian Gulf. That's where all the oil is. Look at all those countries that can't get their oil out unless it passes through the Strait of Hormuz. Look at that. The UAE, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, Iraq, and of course Iran. And then there's some other smaller Persian Gulf countries, and there's Saudi Arabia. Most of Saudi Arabia's oil is in eastern Saudi Arabia, near the Persian Gulf. So it relies on the Persian Gulf. But it's beginning to move oil through the Red Sea, which is to the west of Saudi Arabia. See the Red Sea there on the left? And it can, right now, ship its oil north through the Suez Canal, and there is no problem. So Saudi Arabia is, if this continues, will be able to ship oil through the Red Sea, up through the Suez Canal, and out to the rest of the world. But here is where things get really dicey. This has the potential to be far worse than the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, you see the Suez Canal? Okay, 30% of the world's container ships pass through the Suez. And we're not talking just oil. We're talking everything, especially for Asia and even the United States. So below the Red Sea is the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb. Bab el-Mandeb means gates of tears in Arabic. And if someone were to close the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, there would be a lot of tears. The Suez Canal would be worthless to everyone except Saudi Arabia, Egypt. They could go north through the Suez. But everybody else around the world would have no use for the Suez Canal because if they have to go through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait and they can't, then they can't use the Suez Canal. This is perhaps an even more important maritime choke point than Hormuz. And again, who would want to close the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb? Iran. But can they? Iran is all the way over there, the Northeast. How could Iran close the Bab el-Mandeb Strait? Well, remember the Houthis? They have pretty much taken over Yemen. We bombed them a year ago. Why? Partly because Yemen is to the south of Saudi Arabia, and the Houthis don't like Saudi Arabia, and the Saudi Arabians don't like the Houthis. Partly because the Houthis are Shia Muslims and the Saudis are Sunnis. So that's one of the reasons they don't get along. The Houthis have been firing missiles into Saudi Arabia and at tankers, European tankers, in the Red Sea as part of this proxy war they're fighting on behalf of Iran. Iran, a somewhat oil-rich nation made up primarily of Shia Muslims. And as you know, Iran and Saudi Arabia don't like each other. Saudi, Sunni, Iran, Shia, but there are other reasons besides religion. Now, they call the Houthis proxy fighters for Iran. But the truth is they're going to fight Saudi Arabia with or without Iran. They don't need Iran to give them a reason to hate Saudi Arabia. The same way Hamas is fighting Israel with or without Iran. Hezbollah in Lebanon is different. That is an Iranian creation. But the Iranians figure, when it comes to the Houthis, hey, as long as you're fighting the Saudis and you're Shia, what the hell? We'll pitch in. We'll give you some money. So again, look at the map. Geography is destiny. There's the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. In order to pass through it, you must go through Yemen. And there's Yemen, buttressed right up against the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. And all it takes is the Houthis to plant 3 mines in the water. And that's it. It's closed. They don't have to sink a ship. And if they sink one ship, the entire Suez Canal is shut down indefinitely. Well, certainly that wouldn't happen, right? I mean, we bombed the Houthis last year, right around this time. The Houthis, as I reported on the last show, have entered this war. This really is World War Trump. This is a global war, and it's World War Trump. He can't even win a war named after him. So the Houthis from Yemen have resumed missile attacks on Israel. And they are warning that they will start firing at tankers in the Red Sea again. And even worse, they will close the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. It has been estimated that if the Houthis simply declare that the Bab el-Mandeb Strait has been closed, a barrel of oil will jump immediately to $150 because 10% of the world's oil passes through the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb. Not as much oil as Hormuz, but you close the Strait of Bab el-Mandeb, you close the Suez Canal. It is the threat, just the threat, that will cause prices to jump. The threat of closing Bab el-Mandeb causes insurance rates to become unaffordable for these tankers. They're $1 billion each. Even Trump knows that. He said all it takes is one oil tanker to get hit, and nobody's going to go through Bab el-Mandeb. In fact, as I said, you just have to plant 3 mines. You just have to say we planted 3 mines, and these pilots are not going to send their tankers through the Straits of Hormuz or Bab el-Mandeb. It's the threat. As of today, I'm going to give you an idea just what this is: asymmetrical war and psychological war. Hormuz is shut, right? So how many ships has Iran sunk how many ships trying to pass the Strait of Hormuz has Iran sunk? None. A tugboat. Iran has only fired on about 22 commercial ships approaching the Strait of Hormuz. You all remember that Thai-flagged bulk carrier called Mayuri Nari. On March 11th, it got hit. It caught fire in the engine room. They had to evacuate. 3 crew members supposedly died. But that ship was not sunk. And the fire was later extinguished. By some accounts, they may be able to rebuild it. That was the worst. That's all that needed to happen for the Strait of Hormuz to shut down. From what I'm reading, 1 tugboat has been sunk outside the Strait of Hormuz. 22 commercial ships have been fired upon, slightly damaged. Again, with that ship from Thailand being the worst. 3 crew members might have been killed. So in terms of asymmetric warfare and psychological warfare, not a lot of capital expenditures on behalf of Iran. Doesn't take much to essentially shut down the world economy. We spend $1 trillion a year on weapons. Iran spends less than $30 billion. Who's winning? You tell me who's winning. This is why a growing chorus of people in Congress, on both sides of the aisle, and around the world are saying the United States is badly and embarrassingly losing this war. Those are the words of Connecticut's Democratic Senator Chris Murphy. So I've lived through a lot of unpopular American wars. This is the most unpopular American war ever. And even Iraq in 2003, which wasn't popular, it still had about half this country supporting it. And nobody, a month into it, would dare to say, we're losing. Certainly not American politicians. 4 weeks in, American politicians on both sides of the aisle are saying, we're losing this war. Vermont Democrat Senator Pete Welch said, we're losing. Welch said, thanks to Donald Trump, the entire world is now questioning just how strong America actually is if Iran dictates when and if the Strait of Hormuz ever opens up. The great Massachusetts House Democrat Jim McGovern said, Donald Trump has dragged this country into another stupid illegal war in the Middle East. And there is no doubt about it. Working people are going to pay the price for what? For what? Virginia Democrat Senator Mark Warner is vice chairman of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. He's one of the top Democrats. He's part of the Gang of Eight. He came out and said America is losing the economic war and that Iran is the victor. He said thanks to Trump's decision lifting economic sanctions on Iranian and Russian oil in order to keep prices down, Russia and Iran have become the ultimate beneficiaries of this bombing campaign with more money now to wage war on American soldiers stationed in the Persian Gulf. Putin is helping Iran, giving them drones, satellite intelligence on where our soldiers are stationed, because that's what we were doing with Ukraine. This is what Senator Mark Warner said. In the middle of a war where Iran is attacking us, this president has given a green light to fund $14 billion to the Iranian regime, essentially funding our enemies. $14 billion. Again, they spend $30 billion a year on weapons. Democrat Lloyd Doggett represents Texas's 37th congressional district. He said Trump is cornered with no way out of this. He compared this military blunder to America's disastrous defeat in Iraq. He took to the floor of the House and said Donald Trump is being bested by the more hardline Iranian regime. He said, all we have to show for it is death and destruction, a depleted weapons supply, soaring gas prices, and an Iranian regime that is intact and more hardline than ever. Iran has grabbed Trump by the Hormuz. That's what he said, by the Hormuz, with no path out of a quagmire that could be like Iraq. It's not just Democrats. South Carolina House Republican Nancy Mace said she sees no evidence of any U.S. military success. Mace, along with other Republicans, stormed out of a Pentagon briefing last week telling reporters Trump has no exit strategy. Mace said that the Washington war machine wants to drag us into another 20-year quagmire. She said she sees no reason to send American troops to die. You're hearing that from Van Orden. You're hearing that from a lot of Republicans, especially Republicans who serve this country. As I said earlier, American farmers are planting their crops right now and forced to deal with a 30% jump in the cost of fertilizer, all thanks to World War Trump. Ohio House Democrat Marcy Kaptur, she's been on this show, she says farmers in her state, Ohio, are paying 40% more for fertilizer. Kaptur said her farmers are now paying close to $6 a gallon for diesel. And because of record drought, this is the make or break year for many of the farmers in Ohio. She warned Ohio's agriculture sector is teetering on the brink because of drought. And what causes drought? The stuff that can't flow through the Strait of Hormuz, oil. UN Human Rights Chief Volker Turk called Trump's decision to bomb Iran, quote, a strategic failure. He's saying, forget human rights abuses. It wasn't worth it. These human rights abuses weren't worth it. Trump is failing. Ben Cahill from the Center for Strategic and International Studies said by launching this war, Trump dropped a massive financial windfall into Putin's lap, as well as Ukraine's. Zelensky's making deals with Persian Gulf states for his technology. He's turning Ukraine into a military juggernaut, and the Persian Gulf is financing that. Yair Lapid leads the opposition party in Israel. He warned Benjamin Netanyahu's fighting a multi-front war without any strategy and stretching the military way too thin. Danny Citronitz was a military analyst for the Israeli Defense Force. He says Iran now holds the upper hand because they know Trump is desperate. Dmitry Medvedev is the former president of Russia. He said if Trump launches a ground invasion, he's looking at another Vietnam. Professor Mohsen Farkhani, who teaches at Iran's University of Isfahan. Isfahan, by the way, is where much of the Islamic Republic's nuclear research is conducted. He said Hegseth and Trump mistook Iran for Syria, thinking they could shatter Iran into hundreds of little pieces like Syria. But he says they were totally wrong. That's from Professor Mohsen Farkhani, who teaches at Iran's University of Isfahan. Isfahan is where the American military spent all Monday and all Tuesday dropping bunker busters, attempting to see how deep they can penetrate a mountain. That's where supposedly about 1,000 pounds of enriched uranium is. Sir Alex Younger is the former head of Britain's MI6. Here's what he said. He said, the reality is the U.S. underestimated the task and lost the initiative to Iran. The Iranian regime has been more resilient than anyone would have expected. They're in a civilizational war of existence. Iran launched its 87th wave of drone and missile strikes on Israel and Persian Gulf states, targeting American military assets. That happened on Tuesday. And the wave came from the Iranian Navy, which Trump and Pete Hegseth insist has been entirely wiped out. Pete Hegseth briefed the press on Tuesday. For the first time since this war began, Hegseth was willing to acknowledge that he was surprised by Iran's capacity to still be able to launch drones and missiles. He said before he said we were surprised that they went ahead and shut the Strait of Hormuz. Nobody could have anticipated that. No, you're an ignoramus. You're an alcoholic who wanted to pick a fight with Muslims, so you cherry-picked the information. You didn't want to hear about the Strait of Hormuz. You didn't want to hear about all their missiles hidden in mountains. During his press briefing on Tuesday, Hegseth insisted the United States is closer than ever to winning this war. He sounds like Baghdad Bob. Remember Baghdad Bob? Hegseth joined Trump in lashing out at Europe for not offering to send in their navies to open up Hormuz. He added, they need that oil coming out of Hormuz more than we do. Yeah, that's why they told you not to do this. Hegseth laid into Britain specifically, but for some reason, he reserved judgment when it came to reports that Russia is actively assisting Iran by providing it drones and satellite intelligence on the whereabouts of the 50,000 American troops stationed throughout the Middle East. He had nothing bad to say about Vladimir Putin. Hegseth couldn't contain his false bravado and alcoholic swagger, telling Iran, looking into the camera, you better make a deal because we negotiate with bombs. How's that tough talk working for you, Pete? Huh? There's a reason you're an alcoholic. There's a reason you're an alcoholic and a Christian nationalist. You rely on alcohol and your insane beliefs in Christianity to compensate for your inadequacy. You know you're inadequate. You know you're weak and impotent and stupid. That's why you turn to alcohol and Christian nationalism. Hegseth refused to say what the plan was for the newly arrived Marines and paratroopers. We may have as many as 15,000 that have been sent to the region. He refused to rule out boots on the ground. So it should come as no surprise that those who work closely alongside Pete Hegseth inside the Pentagon have a nickname for him. According to multiple reports, their nickname for Pete Hegseth is Dumb McNamara, as in LBJ's Defense Secretary Robert McNamara. They're saying he's a dumber version of Robert McNamara, who stumbled into Vietnam with no way out, and, like Hegseth, whose only solution was more bombs. Dumb McNamara, incapable of admitting maybe my strategy and the war is stupid. The other criticism is Hegseth is fighting two wars, one against Iran and another against the woke. What that really means, though, the war against the woke, he's a racist and a bigot. He came under criticism this month for refusing to promote 2 black as well as 2 female members of the military to general. He called them unqualified. He said, before he became defense secretary, women should not be serving in combat, that they're not qualified, they're not strong enough, they shouldn't be generals. There are reports that Hegseth's chief of staff, Ricky Buria, claimed Trump said he did not want to stand next to black female officers at any military events. Buria denies telling anyone that. On the last show, I went over Pete Hegseth's past statements on Islam, calling it incompatible with the West, a religion of war, how the tattoos on his chest are neo-Nazi symbols evocative of the Crusades, when Christian soldiers attempted to reclaim the Holy Land from the Muslims. Pete Hegseth has repeatedly written about the clash of civilizations. He is a Christian nationalist who says America is a Christian nation. He reportedly once led a group of drunken co-workers into a chant of "Kill all Muslims." I clipped this part of the show from yesterday or 2 days ago. I suggest you go back and watch it because you need to understand, for people like Hegseth, this war is partly about Iran containing it, but it's also about waging war on Islam, a biblical holy war on Islam. So he put it into writing. He said it before. He watches what he says. But there's another alcoholic, Rudy Giuliani, and he can't watch what he says because he's an alcoholic and he's brain dead. What is that? Okay. Is that making a noise? No. Rudy Giuliani said the quiet part out loud. Let me just look at this. I made this a year ago. That's okay. Rudy Giuliani said the quiet part out loud, appearing on Piers Morgan, America's mayor, yesterday accused King Charles of being a Muslim. Giuliani said, quote, "I have people from England telling me you're going to be a Muslim country in 10 years. He accused British Prime Minister Keir Starmer of being overly sympathetic to Muslims. He said he seems to want to make them happy, make them contented. He doesn't seem to want to make them English." So that's the rap against Muslims. When you talk to Pete Hegseth or Rudy, or they don't assimilate. Rudy said, "I was in London about a year and a half ago, and it seemed to me there were an awful lot of women with veils on that I'd never seen before." Calling the Quran a cult of death on Piers Morgan's show yesterday, Rudy said Muslims are trying to take over Britain. Giuliani added, "Muslims are contrary to immigration and assimilation. They just do the immigration part. They do the immigration, and then they follow Muhammad. And what did Muhammad tell them to do? Take over." He said they're, quote, "taking over, and they want to take over. It's their aim." And this is the important part. He said, Rudy Giuliani said, Iran is the fuel behind Muslims taking over Great Britain. Iran is the fuel behind Muslims taking over Europe and the United States. And he said, you take out the Islamic Republic of Iran, the whole thing moves in the other direction, unquote. So this is what this war is about for a huge chunk of people in Trump world. Killing Muslims. A crusade. Fighting the final battle. So Jesus comes back. So this is what people close to Donald Trump really believe. They are intolerant, racist bigots, alcoholics, sexually dysfunctional. Pete Hegseth is obviously sexually dysfunctional. His own mother put into writing, quote, "You're a serial abuser of women." He's been married 3 times, had to pay one woman $50,000 to make her rape allegations go away. These people are intolerant, racist bigots. They don't read or care to learn about other cultures. So it is human nature to try to make order out of chaos. And we need to believe, at least, that we understand how the world works. Now, if you're too lazy, too drunk, and too stupid to study history, science, medicine, anthropology, geography, you fall back on what you know best: racism, bigotry, and hate. Instead of trying to understand other people, people who look or think differently from you, people like Hegseth, people like Mike Huckabee, our ambassador to Israel, people like Rudy Giuliani, Donald Trump, Mike Johnson, they divide people into religions, genders, sexualities, skin pigments, to explain things they're too stupid and lazy to understand. And that makes them prone to conspiracy theories, too. It's simplistic. So you just go, oh, it's the Jews. The Jews are behind it. Or it's because they're black. It's because it's the gay mafia. If you're stupid, you just group people into different demographics, like the Democratic Party does. As for Rudy Giuliani, he's all id now. He's in his 80s. He's drinking. He still has that trial in Arizona for the false elector scheme. There's a woman suing him for rape. But I'm surprised that he lashed out at King Charles, especially since Rudy was recently awarded a British knighthood by King Charles. That is why Rudy is now called Sir Rosas. And when he's in London, Rudy Giuliani is called Sir Rosas. Yeah, well, he's all for spilling American blood in Iran, Rudy. Just not his blood. Doesn't want to spill his blood or his scotch. And you know who also says he thinks it's worth spilling American blood in Iran? South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, another guzzler. Mostly liquor guzzler. Lindsey Graham, he's a guzzler. He is. And sometimes he guzzles alcohol. Lindsey Graham is telling Trump to seize Kharg Island, right off the coast of Iran. Openly, he's saying this. He's a very open person. He's very open about himself and what he believes. He was on Fox News. He said, we got to go in, and I told the president we got to go in and seize Kharg Island, which is right off the coast of Iran. It's Iran. It's where Iran produces 90% of its oil. Graham said, we take the island the same way we took Iwo Jima during World War II. He said, yes, there are going to be American casualties. He says, but that's what happens during war. Well, Congress is on spring break. I'm not making this up. That's Lindsey Graham photographed at Disney World. This was with a magic wand, I believe. This was Graham at Disney World over the weekend. He spent a couple of days at Disney World in Florida. Here he is with that's his wife, I guess. He's having a cup of coffee with his wife at Disney World. So, my question is, if Lindsey's at Disney World, I can only assume he's there with his children. I wonder if he's willing to send his own children to spill blood at Kharg Island. Oh, he doesn't have any children. Oh, I didn't know that. And he's not married. Then what the F is he doing at Disney World? I used to take my kids to Disney World, and I always said, stay away from that. The grown adults, what a creep. What a creep. Grown adults going to Disney World without their kids. Doesn't have kids. Peter Pan never grew up. Grown man, Lindsey Graham, hanging out in Disney World without his own kids. All the places you could go. Really creepy. So, Lindsey Graham, you think all Donald Trump has to do to get Hormuz open is send American troops into the Persian Gulf to seize Karg Island. That's what you believe. What do you need Disney World for? You already live in Fantasyland. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis recently signed legislation renaming Palm Beach International Airport to President Donald J. Trump International Airport. It'll cost close to $3 million for the name change, possibly more than $5 million. Trump insists, I'm not making a penny off it. But there are reports that the Trump family has already gone ahead and filed trademarks on all DJT airport merchandise. See, Trump slaps his name on everything. It's now the Trump Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. The U.S. Treasury Department announced President Donald Trump's signature will appear on all future U.S. paper currency later this year. H.R. 1761 is a bill introduced in the House calling on the Treasury to create a $250 bill with Trump's face on it. Trump is lobbying to get his name on streets and buildings throughout Washington, D.C., all while he's still alive. And over the weekend, he even joked that after he gets the Strait of Hormuz open, it should be called the Strait of Trump. So, I've been thinking, as Trump's war enters its second month, let's call it World War Trump. Because it really is a world war, and Trump started it. So why not name it World War Trump? It's worldwide, not just the Persian Gulf, but Israel and Iran is now firing missiles again at Turkey. So NATO might actually get dragged in to this after all. And it's not just Russia helping the Iranians kill our soldiers. The New Republic reports China is lending its satellite intelligence to the Iranian army to help them target our 50,000 soldiers stationed in the Middle East. Well, there are more than 50,000 now. There's probably 65,000. So China is helping Iran kill our soldiers. And of course, they're buying Iranian oil and a Chinese container ship. Several Chinese container ships were allowed to pass through the Strait of Hormuz yesterday. So Russia, China, Europe, it truly is World War Trump. And why not name it after Trump? Because he thinks it's going great. He says war with Iran is nearing completion. He's predicting an economic rebound like you've never seen before. He said the Iranian military has been decimated, destroyed. They're all dead. Dead. Trump says, I'm in serious discussions with Iran. They came to me, he says. They want peace, and they offered concessions. He said, Iran said, Mr. President, sir, if you just stop bombing, we'll give you 20 oil tankers that will be allowed to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. And he said, as a sign of good faith, he said, Iran said to me, here, we're going to allow 20 oil tankers pass through the Strait of Hormuz as a present to you, Donald Trump. That's what Donald Trump said. He said, we've won this war. The war has been won. Their military has been decimated last week. He said, we are winning so big, tremendous success. He said, they're defeated. They can't make a comeback. Make a comeback. Like it's Kevin Costner trying to find a movie that will rejigger his career, which he did do. Over the weekend, Trump said, we've blown Iran off the map. We've met my own goals and Putin's, and we're ahead of schedule. The Navy and Air Force, quote, dead. No defense, no defense. He said the U.S. has achieved total regime change in Iran. According to Trump, the U.S., he says, is now negotiating with a whole new set of people who are, quote, much more reasonable than previous leaders. He said this time, Iran, they came to me, they want to negotiate, they mean business, they want to settle, they want peace. They said to me, it's enough. He says, we have a major point of agreement. Can't talk about it. We have a major point of agreement. He said, I will tell you this, though. Iran told me they're willing to give up their nuclear weapons plans. They came to me and said they want to talk and we're giving up our nuclear weapons plan. They never had plans for nuclear weapons. Ask Tulsi Gabbard, your director of national intelligence. They gave it up in 2003. Well, the truth, there are no negotiations. I know it's hard for you to believe, but Donald Trump plays fast and loose with the truth. There's no dialogue. There are no negotiations. Iran says it was the United States that came to Iran asking to begin peace talks. Iran won't pick up the phone. It won't talk to the United States. Pakistan has become the intermediary. Trump gave Pakistan his 15-point peace plan and asked Pakistan to give it to Iran, and Iran told Pakistan to tell Trump, you know what. Iran called Trump a pathological liar. They said, we didn't give him any presents. We never allowed 20 tankers of oil to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. We didn't give him a gift. And it turns out there's no evidence that 20 tankers ever passed through the Strait of Hormuz. Iran told Pakistan it will open up Hormuz when the United States is held accountable for starting this war. Iran said, we were negotiating on a Thursday. They ended it and began bombing on a Saturday. Iran told Pakistan it wants to be compensated for the damages. It wants reparations. Iran's parliament speaker, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, denying that negotiations have been taking place with the U.S. But Trump on Monday said, that's who I'm negotiating with personally. Iran's parliament speaker, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, said, no, I'm not negotiating. No negotiations have been held with Trump. And fake news, Trump's fake news is trying to manipulate the financial and oil markets. He said, I welcome an American ground invasion. We're waiting for you. The Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson, Ismail Baghaei, he denied any talks, any communication whatsoever with the United States has taken place. It turns out killing all those leaders resulted in hardliners, wannabe martyrs. Trump is all out of options. He's thinking of saying, and he's already said it, he said it on Tuesday, we don't need Hormuz. It's Europe's problem. He said to Great Britain, we did the hard work. You go in and open up Hormuz. We're going to leave maybe. So Trump claims he's talking with Iran, but we know they're not talking, which is why he's freaking out and threatening crimes against humanity. He has threatened to take out Iran's water desalination plants its power grid. These are war crimes. These are war crimes. Even worse, according to Bellingcat, the United States has been dropping Gator scatterable mines in Iran from the air. We're dropping landmines and what's her name? Caroline Leavitt was asked about that during yesterday's press conference, and she said, I can't talk about it. We're not a signatory to the landmine treaty, and we are now dropping, according to Bellingcat, landmines from above onto Iran. So what does that mean? It means we've lost our moral authority. It means when Marco Rubio says Iran is immoral, it means nothing. When Iran dropped cluster bombs on Israel last year, America couldn't say anything. We couldn't scream war crime. We're threatening war crimes. We're dropping landmines, and we torture. We violate all international law when it comes to waging war. The airstrikes on narco-terrorists in the Eastern Pacific and the Caribbean, those are war crimes. Those are against the law. You can't shoot boats because you think they're narco-terrorists. You got to give them an opportunity to surrender. You can't shoot survivors, which we've done. These are war crimes. There's no question. No question. We've lost all moral authority. When we began waterboarding and torturing inmates at Gitmo, John McCain, who was tortured in North Vietnam, was outraged. And he said one of the reasons we don't torture is we don't want our soldiers to be tortured. That's one of the reasons. It's tough when Iran is dropping cluster bombs on Israel and the United States has to remain silent on that. He is out of options. Now, I think the best thing he can do, and Nancy May said this, is declare victory and leave with the Strait of Hormuz closed, and then let Europe, which needs the oil, negotiate some kind of deal with Iran. Europe is sitting it out. They're obviously waiting, and that will essentially be the end of the American empire as we know it. Maybe he did us a favor, Donald Trump. Maybe he did us a favor. There is no solution to this for Trump. I'm going to say this is as stupid. Not as many people have died as from Iraq, but this may be impossible for our military to bounce back from. He's out of options. He's saying maybe a commando unit will go in and seize 1,000 pounds of enriched uranium. Maybe they'll go for the crown jewel, Karg Island. It's a lot. It's a lot of blood on his hands. We haven't even talked about ICE. So if you're not registered to vote, if you're not going to vote for a Democrat, what good are you? Do I like Chuck Schumer? No. Do I like Hakeem Jeffries? No. During World War II, nobody liked Stalin. He was our ally when we needed him. I have problems with the Democratic Party, but we have to win the midterms. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Thank you to Bob and Mila in the chat room for keeping the conversation civil. And leave a comment. I plow through a lot of stuff here. I make mistakes. I issue corrections. So if I made a mistake, let me know in the comments section. Subscribe to my channel. Subscribe to my newsletter. Hit the like button. Share this stuff. I'm going to try to do another show at 6 p.m. or 6:05 p.m. Eastern Thursday night. I'm going to try to do it. There's a clip that we're posting in about 45 minutes about, I don't know. Well, there's a clip. We clipped the part about Hegseth's Holy War. So we're posting little clips, not too many. Okay. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you. Moving on.